Oh hi, this is Applejinx. You caught me working on the clock some more, and I've come up with something that's kind of nice. As you can see, I got my little row of signs. They don't go as far as the previous one, in which I counted out the timer duration to where I had a clock that went for an epoch, or 2.8 epochs specifically. And the concept still holds. I just don't have as many of the multipliers built in this time. I worked out what would take a month, and what would take a week, and 2 days, and 11 hours, and then the actual clock that I've got here goes up to 2.8 hours. The difference is this clock is reliable. And I know everybody wants to say that when they make a clock and go, oh, this is going to be great. As long as there are no strange behaviors with the redstone or something, it should be wonderful, then it'll last forever. And it never seems to work out. But this one has something different to it. We've got the same type of outputs. You'll notice there's one slight change. I have put a torch on the outside of this block, and the same in all of these guys, because this is our output. This part of the design is the same as the previous video. It works by having 4 hoppers. They're all clamped at all times, except when a signal comes through and releases it. Move into this hopper and turn on this comparator. The comparator will power this block, and the block will unpower this redstone torch. At the same time, we have the oscillator coming through, and that will cut the power to this whole line as it goes along in a timed kind of way. And the upshot of it is, when this comes through and powers this, for a brief moment, both of these will be off. This will be off for the entire cycle, and this will be off for just a moment. And those two being off is enough to allow this one to turn on, which we'll be seeing shortly. Oh, actually, we just did see it. That just turned on, and that blinked off briefly. That gives you a multiplier effect, and you just link them together. You can see how it's put together. You can see that it's a 3-tick delay. That's what it turned out to like. I tested it out to make sure that it could propagate all the way down, and it could. The difference is up here. This is still the tick length controller. It's essentially clamping this and releasing it only briefly. And it's operating in the same way that powering the block and then sending the pulse through. And only when the block is released and the pulse coming through is also not there does it let go of that. This is also generating the length of pulse that I need, so these need to be set up this way with these lengths. This is another thing entirely. We've got a big old bank of hoppers here, which I am emptying out now. Now, what happened with the SETHBLIIING design that caused it to lock up for people is this. He had 4 different clamps, each to a different comparator. Each one clamped the successive hopper. And as a result, if you had items scattered all throughout the hoppers, everything stayed locked at all times. Anytime you got an item out of place, you ran a higher risk of locking everything up. If it's scattered full of items, none of the comparators can ever actually release. This is different. This has got a 2-tick delay, and it's powering this hopper and this hopper. Not one, but 2 hoppers, and then all the rest of them are just loose, including the one that the comparator is connected to. And that's important because it means it can do an interesting thing. You can have your one cycling through there, and it's all well and good. But supposing you have it scrambled up, like if you have 3 stuck in there, then you've got 1 and 3, and that's breaking it up. What you need to do is have it work somehow so that rather than having the 2 phases in there, they need to be delaying at different times, perhaps if they were odd versus even, and gathering themselves up so that you would have just the one pile of stuff going through. In other words, rather than breaking up into smaller piles, it would have to build itself into the one pile so that... Oh, it's just done that. This is the design that I'm talking about. What it does is it's capable of gathering up isolated bits of item that are out of sequence and build it into one consistent flow. Now there are weaknesses to the design. Like in here I'm just throwing a single item in its path, and the more you've got going on, the more likely it is that it'll sort of gather it up. But if you fill the entire hoppers just full of noise, just randomly scatter them throughout, it can get itself into states where it can't continue. However, if you load it up normally and allow it to just build up, you should be able to see it in the one that's being held, that it'll ramp up to probably the best amount is like 4 fewer than the number of hoppers, but you can go up to like say 2 fewer, or I'm not even sure how many fewer. But if you have a reasonable number of items and your big hopper bank, which can be larger than that, the hopper bank can be as big as you want it to be, then you can get a hopper-based timer that sort of it's using some of the SETHBLIIING design, but it's self-repairing rather than being fragile. If chunks get unloaded and it gets a little confused because some of the items are out of place, rather than breaking because of that, it fixes itself. And I think this is the reason that this will be a functional clock for people. And as you can see, it's driving the sort of gear ratio type reductions. Every 4 stages, these hoppers will cycle around. And I should probably mention, I see no reason why those couldn't be a larger pool of hoppers as well. If you really wanted to have it like 6 hoppers and 6 hoppers and 6 hoppers and 6 hoppers, you can get to ridiculous lengths of time, probably quicker and easier. You could have it not be too wide, you could have it run out to the side, for instance. These ones are not sensitive to which direction they're cycling, but this one is. You should see that it needs to be pointing towards the one that's locked. And this ought to be timer enough. Thank you very much.